about BC Spirits with my guest today, and then all of a sudden now it's in my head. What's happening, Post Shifters? Welcome to another episode of the Post Shift Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Shawn Soole. I've got a great guest today. Like I always have a great guest. I try and do that. I'm just trying to do some Facebook stuff here, as I always try and do in my intro, so that we can get people asking questions. Kristin Ackerman Bacon from Sip Magazine. I'm really interested in this one. I'm always passionate about other hospitality entrepreneurs who have changed up and disrupted the industry, and launching a magazine. Even 10 years ago, people always think that print media is dying, even though we have magazines still. I'm interested to see why actually the real reason why you would start a print magazine when everybody was saying that print media was dead, and sort of the evolution of the Pacific Northwest drink scene, because I still think that we are very youthful. People don't really know much about us outside of the Pacific Northwest, so I'm very keen on seeing how you champion an industry that's still very niche. So I'd like to welcome Kristin. How are you today?
I'm wonderful on this wonderful Monday morning. Brisk outside, that's for sure. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you. And you've been busy the last 2 weeks. We've been trying to connect for a couple of weeks, but you've been busy with the SIP Awards, which is your massive sort of showcase of, and you only do the Pacific Northwest, right?
Yep. The product has to be produced in either Washington, Oregon, Idaho, BC, or Montana.
Wow. Have you started spreading that out to Alberta, or is Alberta still on the outside of?
They're still a little bit on the outside. I'm not sure if they're playing nice with BC just yet. But no. we will get to that conversation later. Actually, it does kind of tie in. So
how many spirits and wines and beers and because you did everything. Because I always thought you did spirits and wine, and then last week you were like, no, I got to do beers this week.
Yeah. So basically what we've been doing this is our 10th annual this year. And so it's really crazy. I can't even believe it. But so generally before, in years past, we've always done wine, beer, spirits, and cider. And as of last year, we felt like we really couldn't ignore this hard seltzer craze and movement. And so last year, we had like 18 seltzers submitted because they have to be produced in the US. This year we have 68 seltzers submitted, which is just absolutely insane. So you can obviously see where that trend has gone. But so yeah, we just had our spirits competition the week before last. We just had our beer competition last week, where we had 500 beers from the Northwest submitted, which is just, I mean, we should have done kind of a behind the scenes, because it's wild the amount of product that we get. And during this time, we really can't have a lot of volunteers. We just, we want to be as safe as possible. So it's been myself, my sister, who's our COO, and our 73-year-old mother. She's amazing. She's such a badass. So just in the background, like, I mean, every submission you have to get multiple bottles of each submission. So we're having 500 beers times 4. That's a lot of product to be working with. So wine happens at the end of September. So
okay, so you do spread it out.
Yeah, we have to, otherwise we literally die.
So we'll get into the magazine shortly, but while we're on the awards, how's it changed over the last 10 years? Like, obviously you just said, like, from last year to this year, just the seltzer thing, and 68 seltzers in Pacific Northwest alone is just crazy.
Mind-boggling.
How has it changed from 10 years ago? Because I know even in BC still, we're still a very young culture. And whenever I try and like push forward an initiative or something, so they're like, what are you up to? What do you want? Like, what do you, I don't trust you. What are you trying to do here?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that question, because honestly, the spirits industry is the one that we've seen the most change. So when we originally first did this competition 10 years ago, everything that was submitted was white whiskeys, vodka. There was really no bourbon. There was no whiskey. Like it was, I mean, I couldn't believe how many white whiskeys we had submitted. And then, like, as you saw, just over the next course of the several years, as things actually age and it is whiskey, true whiskey and bourbon, then we started to really see, the variance in the spirits that are submitted, and people are getting, more creative these days. And obviously there's just a lot more distilleries. So the evolution has been wild to see. I mean, we haven't had a white whiskey submitted in probably 5 years. So still pretty high on the vodkas, but And that's another thing that we saw. Like originally, when distilleries were doing vodka, they really wanted to have the craft of, and the base of the spirit come out. Well, that's kind of awkward because vodka really is mostly tasteless, or a lot of people that drink vodka are drinking it because they can mix it with other things. So when we saw a lot of, like really heavy, potato based vodkas and things like that, like smell pretty funky and smell like, potatoes. So we've seen the finesse of the spirits just over the year kind of evolve. So
let's take it all the way back. Like, how did you get your start in like your passion for the hospitality industry, for the spirits industry and stuff like that? How did that all start?
Well, I mean, originally my passion was it was publishing. I've been in print media for over 20 years. My goodness. But I actually grew up in Eastern Washington, and my dad insured a majority of the vineyards when I was growing up. So I've kind of inadvertently been involved in like the wine industry my whole life. And so I've always loved craft everything. I mean, I think I was drinking craft beer in high school. Sorry, parents. But like when we were originally looking at starting the magazine, we felt like there was just, we wanted to encompass everything, because I don't just drink wine and I don't just drink beer. And there's like a lot of really great producers. And we wanted to kind of, show the whole breadth of the craft beverage industry in the Pacific Northwest, and not just singular to one specific beverage.
And so, as I said in my intro, like even 10 years ago, I look back and I think about where BC was. Like, even I think I opened up a place in 2015 that was really focused on craft. And I remember how tough it was just for the consumer to understand what we were doing. And 2015 in BC, there was still a fair few distilleries open. It's completely changed in the last 6 years. Totally. But to combine something that is such a niche market already, that craft Pacific Northwest product, with print media, what were you thinking?
I mean, so I love print media. I just felt like I wanted to tell the stories of the producers behind the product. That was really, I wanted to really be education based. And I just felt like I wanted to reach people when they were actually sitting down and taking the time to, actually learn and find out about what's in their backyard. And I mean, when we first started, we didn't even have an online component 10 years ago. We didn't have any social media, and it was print was really the only way for them to get it. And so I'm very crazy about like the quality of the paper. I mean, you've seen the magazine. It's like, I have great writers. We have great photographers. I just felt like the way that we wanted to present this, it was in the print format. And I know it was 2009 when we were talking about it, and everybody was like, you're absolutely crazy. You're crazy. And so, but there really wasn't anything for this market for all beverages. So there was like a couple wine magazines, there was a beer magazine, there was no spirits magazine whatsoever. And I just felt like breaking them down and having their own magazines wasn't really going to show like the liquid culture of the Northwest. And so, I mean, I had a lot of contacts in the industry, but like I showed them, I mean, I think I relayed what my vision was going to be. And to this day, I mean, so many more people prefer, print, which we can also get into, because during COVID, we had to not print the magazine and go to digital. And we have people crying every day, emailing us, where's the print issue? Where's the print issue? And things that like, they hold on to these magazines because we're quarterly. So it's like, if they're not monthly, you don't just take it and throw it away. Like, we have great recipes. We have great articles that people really like library our magazines for like the last 10 years.
I have a stack of them. In my library.
And like, are you going online to reread our stories? Let's be real. I mean, that's the thing. And it makes a great gift, and it's tangible, and people really still, I mean, if magazines are done well, it's something they value more than what is online these days. It's just, I mean, even PR people, they're always like, oh, you featured my client. Was it in print or online? Because they take that value of print, which is 10 times higher than the value of an online story, and go back to their client. So
what were the biggest hurdles as a hospitality entrepreneur starting out, like doing a magazine, as we've talked about, that was crazy. Like, what were the big hurdles of trying to get people over onto your side? Was it easy? Was it hard? Like, it seems like, as you said, during COVID, I was like, where's the print version? Where's the print version? But was it
Yeah.
as easy as it seemed and easy as you making it sound?
It was. I mean, to be honest, I mean, of course there's challenges with everything that you do, but I was so passionate about what we were doing with print, and everybody just kind of like they just kind of globbed on and became subscribers, and which helped us in this transition during COVID, because basically what happened is I've been crafting this specific distribution over the last 10 years for SIP, where I was, in all the tasting rooms, all the breweries. We were in room at 50 hotels and resorts, which I always love in-room distribution because you're getting tourists and people that live in town, and you have a captive audience in their room. So it's amazing. So we had our newsstands, we were at all the events, and basically all of that went away in 2 seconds, when everything got shut down. And so we really had to rethink, because we never really focused too much on subscribers, because essentially, like, I was just wanting to get in the hands of beverage enthusiasts wherever that was at. And so we had printed our spring 2020 issue. It came out like March 5th. We distributed 30,000 copies, got them all out, and then the world got shut down. And so we were, forced to, I hate the pivot word, but we all use it, but it's so true. We were forced to figure out, how are we going to get this content out to people if we can't? I mean, because it costs a lot of money to print a magazine. And if we didn't have any certainty of where we were going during, this whole stretch of the pandemic, and to have 30,000 copies of the magazine sitting in a storage unit was just, it was too much of a financial risk that us as a small family owned business weren't really willing to take. So we started, doing this thing called the Full Pour, which was our Facebook live, events, which was awesome. We started pushing more content online. We started publishing more magazines, just digital versions of the magazine, because as you know, a lot of people were drinking more during COVID. And so that meant they were consuming our content more than they ever have, just through different channels. And so I think the challenge is that nobody was really working very much during that time. And so we were very short staffed. And so having to, me coming from that print background, where we put together a magazine, we sent it out to everyone, then we started on the next issue. Now we're working on the magazine, having a full, totally different social media presence, totally different stories online, our newsletter to reach subscribers. So it was like 10 different things we were doing to get content out instead of just a couple, which was challenging, but we made it.
Now that you've sort of opened up Pandora's box in the way of social media and online presence and digital marketing and stuff like that, you think you're going to be able to keep up with that sort of like amount of content? Because everybody absorbs it in different ways.
Yeah.
Like, people want to do video, people want to do audio, people want to do tangible like media.
Totally. I mean, I think that this has opened up our eyes to the fact that we need to be more all inclusive of all the different medias that are available to us. It's just, I've never wanted to be on camera my whole entire life. I've done more of these things and had to shower more than I ever had and get ready during the pandemic, like where everybody's sitting in yoga pants. Well, I actually am wearing yoga pants. But yeah, I mean, it's fun. So we have now a full-time social media girl that handles all of our social media, which is huge. And we're just kind of getting into the groove of all these new things that we're doing and just seeing what is resonating with our readers and followers.
Do you feel like you've opened up a bigger...
Sorry, Shawn, you're cutting out real quick. I didn't hear
juice. I am cutting out, and I have no idea why. With your demographic of who follows your content and who's absorbing your content, have you seen the demographic expand exponentially with the more socials?
Absolutely. I mean, we really have a different demographic for every channel. Like our print media is obviously, I mean, it's crazy because our print media, it's like, we've got the early, millennials, but then we have, the 55 plus that still is pretty traditional and wants that print. Social, totally different demographics than our online presence. So it's really wild and we definitely are reaching a broader audience these days and have to adjust our content based on those specific channels and who we're speaking to.
And do you think that now that you've sort of got this massive spread, obviously you've been in the business a really long time, in the last 10 years, and we were talking about the acceptance overall in the macro for people, because we sometimes, especially on social media, we get in our little bubbles of like, we know what we're doing because it's just an echo chamber. And so you get really geeky because you're like, I love BC spirits, but I still talk to people and talk to customers and they're like, nah, craft spirits in BC, nah, they're okay. I'm like, are you joking me right now? Like talking about whiskey and gins and stuff. I'm like, I have 190 gins on my back bar. And so have you seen that the shift of just outside of our little bubble, our little corner of the world, for people accepting the movement a little bit more?
I think so, for sure. And I think like the millennials are definitely like embracing craft because they're more interested in the sustainability factors of, you know, what these craft small producers are doing. And I think that we're all getting back to really wanting to support small business and local. So I definitely see that shift. I mean, I think you're always going to have the people that are going to buy, you know, White Claw over a local hard seltzer, you know, but I think that the demographic for people wanting to kind of really find out what's in their backyard is growing every year. That, I mean, I've seen since we launched the magazine. So
who are some of your favorite producers that you just like every year? It's the same for me. It's like
my favorite child is, right? Like producers in BC or?
Oh no, across Pacific Northwest. Because I still think we don't get a lot of like really top end Washington and Oregon stuff up here. Sometimes you'll find it and it'll be a small little allocation and you're buying some of the wine and stuff like that, but it'll still be it'll only be a little bit for a little while. Obviously the Willamette Valley and those sort of things have always been very popular up here. My focus has always been pretty heavy BC. Because of just where we are, and I like to champion the things that we have. We have almost 80 distilleries here in the province, which is just insane. But yeah, look, what are the ones that you like consistently every year? You're just like, you know what, I can go back to that. You know, I can sip on that one regularly.
I essentially have to like do this for all beverages, basically. So, I mean, wine is so hard because it's like, it just depends on like what I'm feeling, you know? I mean, it's like, because when you talk about Willamette, that is like, you know, light body Pinot Noirs and Chardonnays. And then Washington, if I'm feeling, you know, like, you know, my heavy reds and cabs and stuff like that. I would say like up in BC, like Long Table is always one of my favorite. And I love what they do. Odd Society Spirits, Victoria Distillers. I mean, there's so many, it's really hard to just pick one out. For Willamette Valley, like Stoller Family Wines has several brands across what they do. And it's just a very approachable, they have products for everyone, wine for everyone, pretty inclusive. As far as beer, I mean, going back up there. I love Driftwood. You know, I love Red Truck. Yeah. Red Truck actually distributed in the US right before COVID. I don't know if they are anymore. Basically, Canada makes it impossible to get our product up there, but it's a lot easier to get Canada's product down here. And in fact, the year before, actually for the 3 years previous to this whole, we say BC, before COVID, I used to drive up for our competitions and I'd fill up my Jeep with all the submissions from BC because the shipping is just so hard, but it's easy for me to go up there because it cost me like, I don't know, 10 cents for every 750 mil to bring back over. So I'd go up and I'd fill up my whole Jeep and I'd come back. And we always had such great representation from BC. And I had judges that would come down from BC. It's just when those borders closed, it just became impossible. So I'm dying to come back up there. I'm normally up in BC like 5 times a year at least. So I haven't been up in over 2 years. It's harsh. But
yeah, I was helping Sheringham, and it was going to be easier for Sheringham to export to the US than to start exporting across the country in Canada.
It's wild. Well, and that's where was talking about the, Alberta
Mm.
is, we wanted to focus on BC because we were trying to really get the whole Northwest. And there was a lot going on between like the wine commission up there and
Mhm.
like your actual, province situation. And it was just making it impossible. And I was like, it's really hard for me to feature something in the magazine that people just can't get.
Mhm.
So I mean, we produced a BC wine guide for 2 years up in BC because everybody was like, we want American dollars up there. So
Mhm.
what I did was I produced magazines that were basically geared towards getting Americans to go up to BC and see how, the wonderful bounty that was up there. So, and then obviously,
Everything. Well, yeah, I had some stuff sent up from a distillery in Philadelphia, and it was going to cost me $750 to get six bottles out of the customs and everything. It's going to cost $750. It's like $16 a bottle for every $10 worth. And I'm like, okay, so I'm going to pay more tax than the bottle is actually worth in Philly. I'm like,
yeah.
okay, so I'm just going to get that sent back. Is that okay, guys? That's fine. Yeah,
Yeah.
the Okanagan has changed so dramatically, I find, in the last couple of years, even in the last 5-10, since I've been going up there regularly, in the way of these small little vineyards that would be selling their fruit off to bigger guys like the Mission Hills and the Quails Gates and stuff like that. Like, let's open a winery, and you'd go up on a Narromata bench, and you would have 5 years ago it was just vineyards everywhere with pretty much nothing, and then all of a sudden it's like winery, 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 winery.
Beautiful winery too.
Yes, exactly.
Because there's money behind these wineries.
Yes, in a big way, in a huge way.
Yeah.
So let's blue sky the next 6 to 12 months. Obviously, the borders are opening up. Travel is going to start happening again, hopefully before the end of the year. What's your plan for the next 12 months for the magazine and sort of the direction of the company now? Obviously, we talked about the digital marketing, social media aspects, which it's always interesting when a company with such a pedigree like yourselves have such a great following in a certain element, and then something happens and you're like, oh, let's do the social media thing for a bit, and let's build on that presence, and all of a sudden it blows up even more so, and you think like, you always think you've maxed yourself out with like penetration in the market, and then you do something, you're like, oh no, wait a second, we've got a lot of area to move into. So
Yeah.
what's the view for the next 6 to 12 months?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's definitely something because, like our Instagram is not just pretty pictures. There's actually stories behind each one, which is that's when thing that we're trying to figure out. Like, how do people understand what our, like, our whole social media presence is? But, in 2020, that was our 10-year anniversary for the magazine. We had massive plans for 2020. We had finally secured the SIP magazine trademark, which I have been fighting for over 5 years.
Oh wow.
So for the viewers out there, we were originally SIP Northwest. That's how we started. And we finally got this trademark. And what our plan was in 2020 is we were going to start to expand our coverage outside of the Northwest. And when COVID happened, we felt like we could not leave our Northwest producers and just kind of, I felt like we were like moving on from them, even though we were going to still cover the Northwest, we just wanted to expand out. I just felt like now is not the time to really start to do anything other than support our local beverage industry. So in 2022, we are going to start moving the ball on starting to produce additional content outside of the Northwest, because and especially like travel once we get back there, because we don't just travel within our drive markets in the Northwest. We obviously, I mean, we have a cider publication too. I mean, people are like obsessed with cider and like want to go like have travel and like find all the coolest pockets. So there's a lot. I mean, we've got an app in development, and which is going to be crazy exciting, but that is honestly probably a year out at this point. The SIP Best of the Northwest issue will be out November 16th. Generally, that is just an issue, and then the spring issue comes out after that. But what we're doing is we're making this a big annual issue, which is going to almost essentially be like a beverage guide to the Northwest that'll be out for a full year. And we will just keep replenishing it, and our drop points and our subscribers will all get it and everything. And we just literally like have to be nimble, I mean, we are not going in a great direction right now. And so, I want to say, hey, we'll be back with another print issue in spring, but we literally just have to see how things are going along with, all the other industries that are affected during this time. So I expect a lot of growth. Whether that's going to be online and social media and our digital magazines, or the print issue will be back. But like I said, we're a small company. We have 4 employees. 3 of them are my family. We have about 70 contractors that work for us, and we publish 2 different magazines. So it's just, so when we talk about SIP, we also have Cidercraft.
Yeah.
So we're doing, print, online, social media, everything for that publication as well. So it's a lot of stuff. If anybody wants to write for Cidercraft, reach out to me, because we're always looking for good cider writers.
Writers.
Also, spirits is another thing. I mean, I feel like we used to have so many people pitching us for spirit like stories, and I feel like spirits has dropped off more than any of the other industries in the past year. It's like, and unfortunately, when we were kind of putting together a list for the Best of the Northwest spirits competition, it was sad to see that was the industry that seemed that we lost more producers than other industries, which was really sad to see. So
I still think that the spirit industry, to a degree, is a little bit in infancy, as you were saying about the vodkas for the competition, like really ballsy, flavorful vodkas. And like, I get it, and I talk to a lot, and I consult on so many distilleries and do spirits and stuff with them. Now that I'm like, I get it, you're super geeky and passionate about a certain product and how you want it to taste. But I'm like, but is it a business move or a passion move? And a lot of, especially in the US Pacific Northwest, a little bit different because of the cost it actually takes to, like, a lot of distilleries can set up on a shoestring, and then when that shoestring breaks, it's like, and we can't do this anymore. Like, there's only a handful, even in BC here, that have really, like, Victoria Distillers, obviously one of the oldest ones. Same thing with Okanagan Spirits. Sheringham has had huge success over the last like 6 years, but they definitely stopped. A lot of distilleries stop after like the 2-3 year mark and go, are we making spirits that are actually going to put on the shelf and sell, and people are going to do a second bottle and a third bottle, or are we just getting people to like try it once and then it's done? And so
that's why they need people like you, Shawn, to go tell them what to do. I mean, you're the perfect person. I mean, obviously you're the one that's you're championing all their spirits, and all the cocktail bars and everything. So I would listen to you.
Well, it's funny, like, we've got, I think, 3 designated vermoutheries in BC now. That all they do is make vermouth. That's wild. The only thing that they make is just vermouth. And I'm like, you guys are crazy. Like, you guys are absolutely insane that you're doing that. But congratulations on all your success. It was really interesting hearing about how online and social media has exploded for you, because I feel like that's always something that everybody thinks about, but then to actually pull it off and like actually make it work in a grand scheme, especially during the big pivot, which is what everybody's going to call this for the next like 10 years. But I want to say thank you so much for your time. That was awesome.
Shawn. And how many times have you been featured in SIP magazine? I know it's
been a couple of times. a couple of times, but we should definitely chat, because I actually have a note here now. We're gonna chat offline about maybe writing some articles about spirits and whatnot.
I would absolutely love that, Shawn. Oh my gosh. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, I just don't. It's hard to. I have my people in BC. The spirits is what I'm really missing, and there's just so much going on. And now that the borders are open, I do want to start talking about what's going on up there a lot more. Because because I love it. I think I was Canadian in a past life. In fact, a lot of people actually ask me if I'm Canadian because I have some sort of weird accent that I've like probably picked up just from my love of my Canadians. So
when I talk to my Australian friends, they say I sound a little bit more Canadian than I do Australian these days.
yeah, I love it.
Well, thank you so much for your time. It's
Thank
been
you.
epic. I'll chat to you very soon.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks a lot.